Today we talk about the most mysterious group in Star Wars, the Bounty Hunters, and the stories you're gonna hear will surprise you. My first experience with the Bounty Hunters was like many of you, seeing them for the first time in The Empire Strikes Back. IG-88, Forlom, Zakus, Dengar, Bosque, and the most famous of them all, Boba Fett. But we didn't get any backstory or any information about them, or even character names in the movie that were completely clear. Vader and his crew just referenced to them as bounty hunters.
Bounty hunters? We don't need that scum.
Yes, sir.
But in 1996, the book Star Wars Tales of the Bounty Hunters came out, and it told 5 mini-stories about each of our mysterious characters. And as a teenager, I picked it up for a read, and I was completely enthralled by it. The story revolves around the scene on the Executioner ship as they get a briefing from Vader, but it's much more than that. It's really character studies that bring to life who they are and how they think. Now, let's take a deep dive on these 5 bounty hunters and who they are. First, starting with IG-88. An IG-88 story makes the Terminator look like an alarm clock. The story starts with IG-88 gaining consciousness, and that part of the story absolutely sucks you in. He wakes up to realize that his purpose is to lead a droid revolution and take over the galaxy. But he's programmed as a bounty hunter, so he can't turn off that part of himself. So he must go on these hunts, while in the background planning his timeline to make his move for domination. He takes control of Mecha 3, a planet that thrives on droid construction and distribution. IG-88 gains knowledge of Vader placing a large order for probe droids, but IG-88 reprograms these probe droids so he can be sent communication of the hidden rebel base before even Vader or the Empire is relayed that same info. IG-88 also embeds codes in every mainframe circuit of every droid produced at Mecha 3 that will activate when they are in need for the droid revolution. Does that sound familiar?
Execute Order 66.
While on the hunt for the Millennium Falcon, IG-88 learns of the Empire's plans to reconstruct the Death Star. He gets an idea that consumes him. His plan? Get to the new Death Star, upload himself into the Death Star's mainframe computer, and he will essentially become the Death Star, using that as his new body. IG-88 has the biggest ball bearings in the galaxy. The story of IG-88 makes you realize why droids are treated so bad in the universe, and why they are forced to wear restraining bolts. This story goes through his confidence, his flaws, and is honestly the best short story I have ever read. Now, I won't give away the ending, but if you have the time to pick up this book and read it, it's well worth it just for IG-88's story. The story of Dengar is a very tragic one. It starts on the operating table, as he's being surgically modified under the control of the Empire. A flashback story tells of how he got here, and it's after a drag racing accident with none other than Han Solo when they both were very young. The Empire used Dengar's dying body to do experiments on him, giving him heightened reflexes, cat-like senses, and they took away his emotion to ever feel fear, compassion, or sadness. Basically, a cold, logistical killer. On the operating table, Dengar can even hear the doctors making fun of him as they burn away the part of his brain that makes him emotionally human. That right there is the saddest part of the story. When the Empire tells Dengar of the bounty on Han, he wants it bad. It consumes him. But along the way, he mistakenly rescues a beautiful empath who takes a liking to Dengar and helps him as almost a surrogate to help Dengar express his emotions. They go on an adventure together to escape a planet, but Dengar learns things about himself that he never knew as a human. And this story is honestly one of the best character developments in a Star Wars book. It's both moving and you learn a lot about the power of love. This takes us to Bosque. He's a member of a hunter race who collects the pelts of other species, such as Wookiees, to please their god, and is an ally to the Empire. It was Bosque's race who told the Empire to enslave the Wookiees. So while Bosque's task is to hunt Skywalker, the thing he really wants is the famous Chewbacca's hide. Let's just say that finding Chewbacca is the equivalent to Bosque of me finding a rocket-firing Boba Fett for sale for $2 at a thrift store. With Bosque's mind so bent on Chewie's hide, he miscalculates who he's doing business with, and soon his partners make Bosque the hunted one. Now, this story was more of a heist gone wrong, and we learn why so many collectors love the character of Bosque. He's cunning, ruthless, and one of the smartest bounty hunters out there. And this story definitely read like a Hollywood action thriller movie. Now we get to Zakus and Forlom. And in this story, the author makes the correct character identification in Zakus and Forlom. And if you all know, Kenner made the mistake of switching the names, so we know them in the toy line as the opposite. Forlom is a bounty hunter droid that belongs to his master, Zakus. This story starts out with Zakus dying from a lung wound and in dire need of an operation to save his life. He's actually dying and suffering from his wounds while in the briefing room with Darth Vader. He only takes the job so he can pay off the gargantuan medical bill that will save his life. It sounds like the American healthcare system. Yeah, I went there. Forlom sees the struggles his master Zakus is going through, and all Forlom wants is to learn the art of intuition that his master has. Forlom was all consumed by it, the art of intuition. All Forlom wanted to do was to learn how to program himself to be the master of intuition just like a human. Forlom and Zakus try to join the Alliance under false pretenses by trying to help one of the rebel transports that has been badly damaged by the Empire during the escape from Hoth, all to try to get closer to Luke, Han, and Leia. And in this story, the way that Zakus has intuition, it almost seems like he's force sensitive and never got the chance to develop himself as a Jedi. The story is one of learning that you can't always get what you want, and how these two deal with that realization. And it makes the characters of Zakus seem as one of the most enlightened souls of Star Wars, and Forlom as one of the most curious and longing to be human. And now for the last story, Boba Fett. Now, since this book was released in 1996, this book obviously doesn't follow the canon that George Lucas established in the Attack of the Clones. In this story, he is not the son of Jango Fett, nor is he a clone in this story. And this was really the first story to tell the bounty hunter's true backstory, as there was no Wikipedia at the time, nor was there any extra lore to understand who Boba was. He was really a mysterious character, with not a lot of people in the general public even knowing his name. We start the story with him in prison, as a young man awaiting trial for an execution-style murder. And he commits the murder as a vigilante, who thinks he was doing the right thing. It flash forwards to years later. We see him take up the name Boba Fett, and he's not a bounty hunter for sport, nor for money, but he feels it's his duty to bring hard-to-find criminals to justice. Boba is all about justice in this story, and his reasoning to find Han is to bring that drug-running smuggler to justice. There's even an interesting scene between Princess Leia and Boba in Jabba's palace. Jabba gives Leia to Boba as a gift, but all Leia and Boba do is talk that night. And he gives a good insight and an argument to where we see the rebellion as a terrorist group for the first time. He makes a lot of sense and leaves Leia questioning her motives. Boba sees himself as a patriot, helping his government. And in this book, Boba also escapes the Sarlacc pit, and there's an interesting scene with Han and Boba as they are in their elder years. Boba is still pursuing Han, but both of them are so old and gray that Boba has knee problems and Han a terrible gambling addiction. It's a very real scene and makes for an interesting close to their connection. Now, I know that none of this book is canon, but to me, well, with the exception of Boba's story, will always be a guide, not to what happened to them as canon, but their thought processes and what's inside their characters. And I hope that when the writers of the Book of Boba Fett, or anybody who's writing Star Wars stories, they look to this book to establish what's inside these bounty hunters and their motives, because it really gives you insight to those characters that we love and are so mysterious as bounty hunters. So thank you for joining me on that deep dive on the bounty hunters and who they are and what they think. And it is one of the best books that you'll ever read. It's a quick page turner, so really go out there. It's called The Tales of the Bounty Hunters. And if you found this video interesting, please hit that like button. It does support the channel. And if you want to see more Star Wars content from me, please subscribe to the channel and also hit that notification bell so you can follow the journey. And as always, my friends, thank you, and I will see you next time.